In the last section, we discussed how a list view works, and now we're going to start to implement it into our application. I'm inside my library list file. I'll first begin by adding an import statement at the very top. So I'm going to import a component from React Native called flat list, like so. So this flat list component right here is what we're going to use to render that sort of list view onto the screen that's going to very intelligently render only a subset of all the items that should be visible at any given time. Now inside my render method right here, we're going to remove the console log statement and the return that we currently have, and I'll return it with an instance of flat list, like so. So we're going to pass this thing a couple of different properties. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of space. The first property that we're going to pass in here is the list of items that we want to render out onto the screen. And so for you and me, that's going to be this.props.libraries. That's our list of items that we want to render onto the screen of the device. So I'm going to say data is this.props.libraries, like so. Next, we're going to add on another prop that is going to contain a function that's going to be used to render out each and every one of these little items on the screen. So I'll add on a property called renderItem, and I'm going to make a helper method for this thing rather than putting a function declaration right in here. So I'm going to make a helper method right up here called renderItem. And then inside of renderItem right here, I'll reference that helper function, like so. So now anytime that flat list tries to appear on the screen, it's going to see the list of all these libraries, and it's going to take like maybe the first 5 or 10 or however many can fit on the screen, and it's going to call this renderItem function with each one. And so it's our job inside of renderItem right here to create some new widget or some new component that we can eventually have show up on the screen. The renderItem function is going to be called with one single element out of our list of libraries. And so I will receive that as an argument that I will call library, like so. Now the last thing we have to do, remember that anytime that we make a list with React, we always have to provide a key on every element that gets rendered. Well, with a flat list, the key system still exists, but it's just a little bit different. Before, when we put together all the keys that belong to widgets inside of a list, we assign a key property directly to each component. But with a flat list, we instead add a function to the flat list itself that tells it how to generate its own key for each item. So I'm going to add on a third property here called key extractor. And this is going to be a little arrow function that's going to be called with one of our libraries, which I'll receive as an argument called simply library. And from this, we have to return some unique identifying token for this particular library. And so if you recall, right now, every one of our libraries has an ID associated with it. And so from the key extractor, we will return library.id, like so. Okay, so that's kind of the setup on the flat list itself. Let's come back to the next section and we'll start putting together this renderItem function, which is going to be responsible for rendering out each individual library onto the screen. So quick break and I'll see you in just a minute.